Good evening, everyone. We know that in India, higher education has a great scope, one thing. Secondly, higher education institutions are coming up each given day. That's the second thing. The third thing is that most of the students which are in 11th or 12th aspire to join higher education institution for that matter. And when we talk about these students, we must not forget that they are a student who require some spatial kind of an opportunity, require some spatial kind of an assistance, and these are some disabled students, and we need to talk about their accessibility to these higher education institution, and that will completely bring in the inclusive education which I have been speaking about. So when we talk about creating unprecedented access to legal education or higher education, it is also very important that we talk about inclusiveness. We talk about education for disabled kids, and we talk about with respect to these kids some important aspects which are with respect to accessibility, which is respect to their accommodation, which is respect to their transportation, which is respect to their scholarship as well. So this is the topic which I wanted to speak to you this evening. Uh, how can higher education institution play an important role in creating this inclusiveness, wherein these students with disability are also brought to the mainstream, and they get also the same kind of opportunity as the kids with no disability. And here and we see when we see Indian education, higher education institution and their premises, for that matter, when I'm talking about infrastructure, first and foremost, it is also very imperative that these infrastructures, these brick and mortar buildings for that matter, should be created in such a manner that students with these special needs, students with the disability for that matter, are taken into account when these campuses, when these infrastructure is being created for that matter. What is the definition of disability? Let's go into the W. If you go into the WHO website, then you will look that disability is a part of a being human. Almost everyone with temporary or permanent experience disability at some point in their life. That's what WHO says in its website. Over 1 billion people, which is about 15% of the global population, currently experiences disability, and this number is increasing due to its part of population aging and increase in prevalence of non-communicable diseases. So this is the first and foremost definition which is mentioned by the WHO, and it continues. It results from interaction between individuals with health condition such as cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and depression, etc., etc. So this keeps on continuing for that matter. Let's come down to India. There's a Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disability, which is called as Divyangjan, and this particular department is within the Government of India Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. So uh, there are various schemes, then there are laws which are created for these Divyangjan, and and that comes, and the developments and their social justice and empowerments is for that matter comes under the Department of Empowerment of Person with Disability. uh, in India, there's also a law on this point, which is the Right of Person with Disabilities Act 2016. So when we talk about this particular set of law, the Right of a Person with Disabilities Act 2016, and I will be very candid that in its chapter 5, it talks about education for that matter, that what does an education institution be doing so as to ensure that the higher education institution for the matter provide some kind of an opportunity, so provide some kind of inclusiveness to the kids with disability for that matter. And I think that we all should go into all should at least once read this particular chapter of the act. And it in this chapter 3 in section 16 calls for the duty of education institution for that matter. And it says that the appropriate government and the local authorities shall endeavor that all educational institution funded or recognized by provide inclusive education. Yes, then it points out that what all they need to do. Then it points out, then another section is specific measures to promote and facilitate inclusive education. That's also one. That's also one of the section which talks about what education institution should be doing. Uh, and again, it calls for to train professionals and staff to support inclusive education at all level of school education as well, and that is really really important. And to make suitable modifications in the curriculum and examination system to meet the needs of students with disability, promote research also on this aspect, and in fact, adult education should also be provided to students with disability. So that's what this chapter calls for. That how what kind of special measures should be taken to ensure that the students who are disabled gets also the equal opportunity to study in India, and especially whether it is school education or it is higher education for that matter. And we are talking about this today. And again, when I talk to you about this framework, and I talk to you about the Rights of Person with Disabilities Act 2016, the good thing has happened that there has been recent news regarding some of the rules, some of the uh, some actions being some actions coming from the point of University Grant Commission. Again, I will not go into that part of PWD, which is persons with disability in India are associated with various exclusion. There have been, and this is a reality, there has been various web series, TV series, and movies also, and we can actually see in and around us that there is some kind of exclusion created. Uh, and to remove these discrimination faced by disabled student, there is need for change, bringing some changes. Firstly, to the infrastructure, then to the curriculum, teaching, learning processes for that matter, and other component. So therefore, UGC has released accessibility guidelines and standard for higher education institution and universities. And these are very, very important to remove any kind of barrier which impedes or prevent or causes difficulty for full participation of these kids in higher education. And what has come recently in the news is higher education institution need to raise fund through CSR activities to enable better access to disabled students. So UGC has laid down a detailed guidelines. How does assistive technology should be used, even for admission policy, even while making admission policies, processes, and on life of campus, so that the life of students uh, with who are disabled for the matter becomes smoother. So these guidelines have been released by the University Grant Commission, and these guidelines are very very specific in nature, and which and and I completely laud this part from the University Grant Commission. They define the need for PWD under 18 specified categories, which are mentioned over here. And in fact, one of them draws my attention is intellectual disability, and that needs to be talked off. For a student with visual disability, the document specify provision of braille, large print question paper, or alternate test format, such as audio use of reader, etc. And these guidelines should go in a large. These guidelines should be implemented in such a manner that the students with disability get all kind of access to these kind of assistive technologies, and also support from the administration and academicians in the higher education institution per se. And then only the purpose of these guidelines will completely be what it intends to deliver. A state party should invest in developing expertise, technology, and service in order to promote access to appropriate technology and alternate communication system to facilitate learning. Yes, when we talk about education, we talk about education for all. When we talk about uh, the growth of an individual, we talk about growth of all individuals per se. So I think that these guidelines will go in a long way, and the higher education institution should raise funds through CSR activities. Yes, various government universities and colleges get funds from the governments for developing the physical infrastructure, and I think some of those funds can be used towards this as well. Moving ahead, there these accessibility guidelines uh, came into the picture, and they are in line with the National Education Policy 2020. um, when you talk about these guidelines and a standard for higher education institution, it talks about accessibility, it talks about information communication, inclusive mobility, movement of these kids across the campus, uh, accessibility in built infrastructure, teaching and learning, resource and service, campus life, etc., etc. UGC issues guidelines for better inclusion of learners with disabilities on campus. Yes, so when we talk about this, we talk about 126-page report that covers all aspect of disability, and that we have been talking about. And it also mentions, where I want to draw your attention, accessible unisex toilet available at all strategic location. Yes, so and also an option of reduced course load based on needs. It should be flexible, along with attendance schedule and the use of assistive aids and technology. So I still remember when I was in National Law University. Then there were some students who juniors of mine who needed who were disabled, who were Divyangjan, and needed some kind of a support from the university, and the university was there to support them. But is it available at all across different higher education institution? It's a question mark. Is our higher education institution taking this on a serious note? This is a question mark. So I believe that with UGC coming up with these guidelines, and the momentum will be created towards this, that higher education institutions, not even higher education institution, I call for all education institution, whether they are school, coachings, for the matter, or higher education institution, whether legal or not, or whether law school or not, they all should have an inclusive atmosphere. They all should be promoting inclusive education, and whatever is needed to do so should be done. If a required of PPP model, which I've already said in my previous video, is needed, it should be done. If government support is needed, they should seek government support. Or if uh, any other kind of help will ensure that people with disability get access to higher education, for that matter, things should move in that order. And at the closing, I just believe that there are some actions taken by higher education institutions across the country, so that some movement can be created, and entire revolution can come around the campuses, and the curriculum, and perception per se. And the students with disabled the students who are disabled uh, get into the segment of higher education in a friendly manner, and education is also accessible to them as it to the non-disabled students. And with this, I believe that uh, they these guidelines will actually change something for better. Thank you so much.